we receive nominations from all over the world, and then it takes 3 years to weed through the nominations, to follow an ever smaller pool of pianists around the globe in various different settings of performances. They do not know that they're under consideration, and we surprise them with this news that they are the next Gilmore artist.
Pierre, welcome back. It's been almost 10 years since we last had you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, Joel.
So we're, of course, here at the Gilmore in Kalamazoo, but let's talk a little bit about one particular thing that you managed to pull off in Cleveland, which was bringing, how would we even characterize it? It was Martha Argerich and Sergei Babayan in their duo recital debut in Cleveland.
I really have no words. Is it okay? I'm still on a high.
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Like, I think, what are we? This was back in 2017, and here we are. Yes, it was a dream come true. And, you and I were chatting about this, about the craziness that swept through town. And we had people come in from all over the country. People drove in, they flew in. And, it was truly a dream come true. One of those highlights of my career that I always look back on and say, yeah, we managed to do that. And, in the end, though, we had very little to do with that because, it's Martha and Sergei who, they're the ones who, when they took that stage, I just remember, the applause, the thunder of it, before a note was played, you could tell you were in the presence of greatness. And that really solidified for me, in a way, where I wanted to go next. Being in that setting, producing concerts, waiting behind the scenes, backstage, that anticipation of the audience, the artists, everybody coming together, it is a kind of thrill that I can't get tired of.
In terms of what you, as a very fine pianist, envisioned when you were growing up, did you ever imagine that your role as, I don't want to say an unsung hero, but you're often behind the scenes in making a big event like that happen?
Are you kidding me? When I was a kid back in South Africa, all of these people were posters on a wall for me. And it was literally an impossible world away. I had never in my wildest dreams thought that Martha Argerich would be sitting, in my car next to me driving through Cleveland, or here we have Maria João Perez walking around in Kalamazoo. This is just, for me, I really couldn't wish for anything more because I also get to talk to these wonderful people and learn from them, get to know who they are and what makes them tick. And again, the kid in me is going, this is amazing. So it's a thrill.
Let's start out by talking about who Irving S. Gilmore was and his story. I don't think I even fully know what it was and why we have a big piano universe here.
It's kind of wild that in a city the size of Kalamazoo, about 80,000 people, you have this incredible festival. And I've said many times over and over again, I'm shocked this is here. Like, how did this happen? Because this is the kind of thing, the kind of organization you would see in major metropolitan markets. And it's because of this community is incredibly special. And yes, let's talk about Irving Gilmore. Irving was a local businessman, and he was a philanthropist. He had a really large reputation in town for making anonymous gifts. He would, if he found a student that he really enjoyed their playing, he would quietly pay off their tuition. Or if he saw that they are in need of an instrument, lo and behold, a grand piano would show up. He wanted to be a pianist, went to New York, studied piano, but ultimately was called back to run the family business here, which was a department store, Gilmore's department store. And then his family, married into the Upjohn family, and the Upjohn company later became a little company we call Pfizer.
The little company we call Pfizer.
So, when he died, he left a very sizable foundation. And the trustees of that foundation thought they would love to do something to honor the legacy of this man who so loved music, but piano in particular. So they commissioned a local piano professor, David Pocock, to do a study. They wanted to do a piano competition, actually, something like the Clyburn or the Tchaikovsky. And he went around the world, studied all these competitions, and he came back and he said, the last thing the world needs is another piano competition. So he wrote a whole thesis on this, and he recommended this Gilmore Award, which is this secret process sort of fashioned after the MacArthur Genius Grant.
And how often is it?
Every 4 years. And the amount is astonishing. It's $300,000 every 4 years. And it's completely secret. Nobody knows who the jury is, except for me. And we go around. We have a nominating committee, and that's public. And so we receive nominations from all over the world. And then it takes 3 years to weed through the nominations, to follow an ever smaller pool of pianists around the globe in various different settings of performances. They do not know that they're under consideration. And we surprise them with this news that they are the next Gilmore artist. And it's that kind of unique and special thing which kind of has seeped into this community as well. People are extremely proud of the Gilmore here and very supportive of everything that the Gilmore does here in town. So the first Gilmore artist was David Owen Norris back in 1991. And so, they thought, well, what are we going to do here, for this community? You have this Gilmore artist. And so they started a festival to invite the Gilmore artists back and guest artists to perform. And at that very first festival, Van Cliburn played, Ray Charles played. It's a very famous story of Miller Auditorium here, 3,500 people seated for an hour and a half waiting for Van to show up to play. And I still bump into people telling me about that concert. So they had a ticker tape parade through town when the festival started. It was a party every night, really a big to-do. And then they took a pause for a couple of years, regrouped, and it has grown over the years from maybe 5 days to now we're at 18 days every 2 years. And it is classical and jazz. We have some pop. We have lectures, films. We have the whole Festival Fellows residency program, commissions. There's so many different things happening here as it's grown over the years. It's really quite exciting to see how this all developed.
So this organization was, it seems, aiming for absolutely the top from the beginning.
His vision was really to inspire this community and to bring beauty to this community and to, connect this community to the outside world, to the world at large. And so, being big gestures like this, like the Gilmore Festival, I think Irving really would have probably loved this kind of thing, and every year we have the festival, we think, gosh, I really wish he would have seen this.
Maybe you can refresh my memory of some of the Gilmore artists. And of course there's also the Gilmore Young artists.
Yes. So every 4 years, Gilmore artists, and every 2 years, 2 Gilmore Young artists. So over the years, Leif Ove Andsnes, Piotr Anderszewski,
Yuja Wang,
Kirill Gerstein, Ingrid Fliter, Igor Levit, Rafał Blechacz. So these are all Gilmore artists. And then, Gilmore Young artists, it was Yuja Wang, Orion Weiss, Andrew Van Weyen.
And so many. And the question is, with such an astonishing amount for musicians, the $300,000, is there a hope for what that will do for them other than just giving a financial boost?
Oh, yes. The way it is structured, the funds really is used in consultation with me because it has to go toward professional development for them. So, we say you can't go out and buy a Lamborghini. Can you even buy a Lamborghini for $300,000? I don't know.
Maybe a used one through the special person.
But the idea is projects that would really enrich your musical career. So Igor Levit, for example, he did that 15-hour long broadcast of the Eric Satie vexations during the pandemic as his statement of a musical scream of the frustration of the pandemic, and using his Gilmore Award funds to do that. He bought an instrument, Edwin Fischer's piano, that that he just fell in love with and had to have. So this came to his apartment using his Gilmore Award funds. Piotr Anderszewski took a sabbatical to learn as much of Szymanowski's music as he could and made a recording with that. Kirill Gerstein has commissioned so many composers over the years using his Gilmore Artist Funds, and now he's built a reputation for himself as somebody who has a real success with commissioning projects. So we see a real impact with that, a real world impact, not only for them, but also for the Gilmore, because everywhere they go, these are Gilmore artists doing these things. And now, super exciting is, we have Larry Bell here in town, and he was president of our board. And this is the inspiring story of this Gilmore Award, because a few years ago, he approached me about, would we consider doing a similar thing for jazz artists? And he has made this incredible gift possible. And now, starting in 2026, we'll also have a Bell jazz artist, also $300,000 every 4 years. And to
I didn't know that.
Bell Jazz Young Artists. It's incredible. And we just started that process as well. Absolutely the same process as the Gilmore Artist.
So the obvious question, and one of the reasons why a story like this is so inspiring, hopefully it can inspire others in other parts of the country or the world to do something similar. Obviously, it would take a whole bunch of resources.
I'm always happy to advise folks on how we put that together, how that all works. And I think you have to share that kind of information. And I've talked to colleagues all around the world about what they are doing, and they're curious about what we are doing in the States. I think also the funding model, as the rest of the world, as the economic realities change, people have to change the way they fundraise, for example. And there's a lot we have figured out in the United States, and happy to share that with colleagues around the world. And then vice versa. I'm always curious how others do this. I'm so inspired by how, for example, European festivals manage to gather an entire community around the festival. And, for example, a whole village like Verbier being in on the festival, or the Heidelberg Festival, it's really special. And so I learned from that and tried to bring that here to Kalamazoo as well.
Is that something that you can advise other leaders around the country, how to be an effective fundraiser?
Without sounding trite, I think you have to think about it the same way as a musician at a certain level. There's a lot of things you can teach. A lot of things that can be taught, but only to a point. People respond to people, and at a very basic human level, people will decide within 10 seconds of meeting you whether they are going to open their hearts and their pocketbooks,
Yes.
to you. And it boils down to, do you have a firm belief in what you're doing? And that you cannot, unfortunately, fudge your way through. You truly have to believe in what you're doing. And it sounds like, pie in the sky kind of thing, but that's really it, So many of the mechanics of fundraising, yes, you can learn that, in terms of annual giving, and, how do you structure corporate support, and how do you structure government support and private foundations, and all of those things are things that you can learn. Now, they're important things to learn. And I really think that if you sit your mind to it, you can dig through all the details of that and come up with a really meaningful fundraising model that works for your community. Because also, every community is different. You cannot, what I learned in Cleveland, not all of it applies here to Kalamazoo. And it's similar, every community is different. But the basic part of it remains the same, And so, and I think that's the same with being a musician. There are certain things that you can just tell somebody connects to a certain composer, or when they sit in front of the piano, everything transforms about them and who they are. That's how I feel when I get the chance to share the story of the Gilmore with somebody who has expressed an interest to support. Also, I think it's important not to force anything. It's so many times, especially here, these things happen naturally. People, this community is incredible. People have a desire to be part of something big. They have a desire to make a difference. And I think if you start that conversation with them, and what does that mean for you? How would you like to make a difference? And what sort of thing is really exciting to you to be part of? And let's talk and listening. A lot of it is listening. Just listening to people.
Were you always good at reading people? Because I would imagine there are some balances that have to be struck.
I think you have to have a very big EQ, emotional coefficiency, to be able to also immediately tell where this conversation is going to go. You can meet with somebody in the middle of the day, and it's a work day, and they agreed to a lunch, but you sit down, and you can just tell this day is not going the way that they had anticipated. This is not the right time to talk about this. And let's just talk about how your day is going. And, we can revisit this some other time. But you have to be able to pick up on signals and and respond to what people are feeling. But I think if you look at it from the outside, people see the award, because it's this big thing in bright lights, and then the festival, it's this overwhelming big festival. But there's so much going on in our education programs. For 20 years now, we've had, for example, piano labs in schools here in town, where it's part of the elementary school's daily curriculum that these kids go into a piano lab. There's not many public schools that you can say that of, so that is truly special. We have piano camps. We have, Keys Fest, which is a whole day of master classes and performances. So there's a lot going on in terms of education. And then at the festival, we started this fellows program where we bring in 27 fellows from around the world, and they're in residence here. They participate in master classes, lectures, performances. They get to go to everything that they want to, and really spend some time, quality time. We have guest lecturers come in, like we just had Lara Downs come in, and Aaron Dworkin, for example. So to really create a meaningful experience for them, looking at all angles of the music industry that they're going to be part of. And, the Gilmore's mission is to nurture and inspire a passion for piano. And nurture and inspire are two very important words within that. And when I first heard of Maria João-Perez's Partitura project, this was years ago already. She started this in Belgium, I think 10, 12, even more years ago.
More, I think.
It stuck in my mind back then because she said this is in response to the highly competitive world we're in. And she wants to create a level playing field and create an environment that is nurturing and inspiring. And it's just so funny and I've kept track of that project all through the years and following her doing it in Belgaïsch. And so when I first came to the Gilmore and I started thinking about where are the areas in which I would like to bring some more depths and really speak to the mission, my mind immediately went to Maria Pierre with this Partitura project. Not only because of when she talked about, what she'd like to do in a highly competitive environment. I was coming from the Cleveland International Piano Competition, from a very high competitive environment, and I was so drawn to the Gilmore, which is the complete antithesis of that. So I saw a real, what do we call them? Happy, coming together of these two ideals, nurture and inspire. Because oftentimes I would ask young pianists, or I would get asked, what would make you book me at the Gilmore? What would make you present me? And I'd say, well, I want you to figure out who you are and what does that mean on stage. That is a really tall order because so many young musicians coming up these days, the instruction around the piano, they emulate their teacher. They have really incredible teachers, or they emulate a wonderful pianist who they admire, and that can often eclipse who they really are. We had a concert with Maria and the partitura participants, and it felt like a family of sorts had developed between Maria and them, and there was just a great deal of gratitude in the room. And I know, yes, I'm the director and they have to express certain things, but this was different. It felt like a gratitude for helping them discover who they are, and helping them feel comfortable with that. I think that's the most important part here. So that makes me smile. That's, I love when that sort of thing happens.
Pierre, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to speak with you again. And hopefully we can check in again in a few years where your musical life has led you. And clearly you have touched so many lives around the world. And I thank you for allowing us to be here and to tell part of the story.
Charles, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.